Hi, my name is Jesse at Trash Panda, and if you've been keeping your eye on the list of PDGA approved discs, then you might already know we just got our first one approved. But just saying it that way makes it sound so simple. So today I want to pull back the curtain to share what we've been working on for the last 6 months and why it ultimately took us 2 full years to make our first disc. So if you've been following our journey from the beginning, then you probably know that I built an injection machine in my garage, made what feels like over 300 different prototypes, all in an effort to make that perfect feeling and flying disc. And realistically, the main reason it's taken 2 years is because I didn't start out with any background in injection molding, prototyping, engineering, plastics, etc. But after all of that, in our final prototype video, I explained how we finally landed on that perfect feeling and flying disc. The only problem was that this weighs 225 grams. So going back about 2 years, when we originally designed this mold, we actually designed it for a less dense plastic. And rather than getting into the minutia of everything we've learned along the way, I'll try to keep it pretty simple. Because our goal is to make discs out of 100% recycled plastic, I looked at the most common plastics produced around the world. And it included things like polypropylene and HDPE. Now, because I didn't know anything early on, I thought to myself, well, this Tide bottle feels like it could make a good disc, so why not start there? And this is skipping over a lot of the story, but we have other videos on that. Ultimately, it just meant that this mold was way too thick for a plastic this dense, meaning that while our HDPE and polypropylene discs were the perfect weight, this is way too heavy. In addition to all of that, I knew we had to scale well beyond our garage because this mold and a hand-injected machine just wasn't gonna cut it anymore. So once we had that perfect recycled plastic, it was time to go from a mold made for my garage to a true industrial scaled mold. So in order not to complicate things too much, I'll try to keep it pretty simple. The current prototype we had flew perfectly, but it was way too heavy. So we needed to take some of the volume out while keeping the flight the same. Kind of easier said than done. And when you're moving from a $500 mold in your garage to a $50,000 mold on a true injection machine, you definitely want to make sure to do it right. So over the course of a couple weeks, we messed with the design, 3D printed a couple prototypes, and finally had something that we thought was perfect. And the key word there was thought. We thought that it was perfect. So this was the first test piece we got from the mold, and as you can probably see, there was a pretty significant issue right off the bat. But before I tell you about the problems and what we needed to fix, let me give it a toss first. All right, so the first and most obvious issue with the disc is that we have some pretty significant warpage on the flight plate. And the reason for this, I'll explain, but I'm gonna keep it pretty simple. Basically, the flight plate is super thin and plastic shrinks when it cools, meaning that the center of the disc was able to cool well before the outer rim. So when the outer rim continued to cool, it just caused the center of the disc to warp like crazy. And as if that wasn't bad enough, all of the discs came out overweight, meaning our calculations were just somehow off. And finally, on top of those two issues, I was really hoping to create a disc that flew super straight, and this thing is way too overstable. So we had to go back to the drawing board. And by drawing board, I mean the 3D drawing board, because the mold had already been cut and we wanted to be as efficient as possible. Because at this point, we'd already taken more time than I wanted. So I'll probably put something on the screen here, but basically to keep things super simple, there are 3 integral parts to a mold. And because ours had already been cut, we wanted to see if we could design a new version of the disc while keeping one of those parts intact. And ultimately, we were able to design a new version where we were able to keep the cavity, but had to recut the core and the stripper plate. And this is where a little bit of guesswork and probably the most interesting part of the process came into play. When we originally designed this version, it actually threw way straighter on the 3D printed prototype. And this came out way too overstable. So once we had the new variation, we 3D printed a version of that and it was incredibly understable. So see if you can follow my train of thought here. When we 3D printed the first version, it was straight and the molded version came out overstable. So if the new variation was 3D printed understable, Might the molded version come out more neutral? Well, ultimately, as beginners in this whole thing, it was a question we didn't have the answer for, but we thought it was at least worth the shot. And, well, so after about another month, we got our second test parts in, and immediately when I felt them and threw them, I knew they were the ones. Literally, I was so confident that before I got anyone else's opinion, I sent them in for PDGA approval. After that, I had our team and some other local friends test them out and asked them all what they thought. And separately and unanimously, everyone said, "These are perfect, you need to send them in." And I responded, "Great, I already did." All right, this is absolutely insane, but here are 3 prototype discs, and we are officially sending them off for PDGA approval right now. I can't believe it's here already. Let's package these up. I honestly don't even know what I'm feeling right now. Like, this doesn't feel monumental, but at the same time, this is literally like, this is 2 years of work in one box that, like, now it's all in someone else's hands. And we've done so much to make sure that, like, we're good. Like, we've triple checked everything, quadruple checked everything, but you know, there's still that possibility. So I'm excited, I'm nervous. I honestly don't even know what I'm feeling, but here we go. So if you didn't already know, every single disc has to get PDGA approved for sanctioned play. Of course, you can play with any disc anytime you want, but if you're gonna play in a tournament, it has to be PDGA approved. And approval rests all in the hands of the PDGA Technical Standards Group. Really, it's just one person, but they call it a group. So at this point, Trash Panda's future was literally all in the hands of Jeff Homburg. And thankfully, almost 2 years to the day that we posted our very first recycled disc video, our first disc got PDGA approved. So this is the Trash Panda inner core. It's a putter that recently got PDGA approved and flies like a dream, and it'll be available to you very soon. But as much as I hate to lead you on, we're gonna have a bunch of videos coming out that show how it flies, how we got the flight numbers, and everything you need to know. So for now, all I can say is thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to support the channel, and we'll see you next time.